I call this press conference to ask the government whether it is correct to make the 2017 presidential election a reserve election. I think it should be an open election. Let's look at what the Constitutional Commission's report originally said. And I quote, "If free and unregulated elections produce presidents from a varied distribution of ethnicities, the requirement of a reserve election will never be triggered. This may be illustrated in the following scenario. An election is reserved for racial group A because no candidate from racial group A has been elected for 5 consecutive terms," unquote. The government white paper published on 15 September 2016 accepted the position. However, the AGC included a nominated president in their count. But the Commission's emphasis was on open elections. Now, on November 7, 2016, in Parliament, a DPM Teo Chee Hean repeated that the reserve election will only come into play if open elections fail to return the president from the different races. So open elections is the trigger for reserve elections. However, one day later, this is what the Prime Minister said. "We have taken the Attorney General's advice. We will start counting from the first president who exercised the powers of the elected president. That means we are now in the 5th term of the elected presidency," unquote. Now, the counting is clearly different from what the Commission said previously. So we need to know why the AGC not advised the Prime Minister to count 5 open elections in line with the spirit and purpose of the Commission. And why did the AGC also advise the Prime Minister that Singapore is now in the 5th term of the elected presidency, when only 4 presidents have been returned by open elections? In all my 26 years in Parliament, we had always referred to Mr. Ong Teng Cheong as the first elected president. The AGC should have counted the 5 most recent presidential terms produced by open elections. This starts with President Ong Teng Cheong. I now invite the government or the AGC to explain why they counted the presidential terms of presidents who exercise elected powers. If need be, the government can refer AGC's opinion to court for independent judicial verification. After all, the courts have the final say on legal issues in Singapore, and the recent high-profile Court of Appeal case have shown that the AGC is not always correct in the legal opinion. How we do things is as important as what we do. On this note, I would urge the government to explain or refer AGC's opinion to court to confirm whether AGC's advice is in sync with the Commission's spirit and purpose of having reserve elections.